So here we are, almost week 2 of the project. I've been tracking along quite well. We're still technically week 1, it's Easter 2016, so I've capitalised on the long weekend. Laid out like a jigsaw here. I have every bit of interior trim. Obviously grille and chrome bumpers as well have come off. They were a bit of a pig, especially the front one, which I do know is par for the course. Door cards, a bit of trim. I'm not sure whether the door cards need to be exactly recreated as are, or whether I can fashion something slightly different. There's a bit of a stopper in there as well. Gear gaiter's obviously still in because it's just glued completely, but this is what's left of cockpit. I haven't taken the dashboard off yet, but I've removed pretty much every other bit of carpet. It doesn't look too bad. Obviously there's all this sort of mastic stuff I've just chopped around the seat belts because I need to work out whether they're actually legal, those mounting brackets, and also I think they're on nylon nuts or some sort of unfastenable nut. I couldn't actually get them removed when I had to go. It's a bit tricky to get access, but there's not a huge amount of rot. It looks pretty good. I'll need to peel that off. Job for another day. I'm hoping all that comes away fairly easy. There's obviously some rust in there, so when I remove the skins in the panel, we'll see what comes in. Bonnet and boot stored over there, the MG badges, everything's getting bagged and tagged, and I've got a spreadsheet already going. Apologies for the quick movements. Some rear light clusters, got one more still to come off. Nothing removed yet in the engine bay, but we're tracking along nicely. I suspect that the stripping is going to be the easiest part of this job, and the question is actually to try and cleverly tag everything so that I can get stuff sent off for chroming if I want to, or can clean stuff off myself. That's going to be the big job. Lots of wire wheels, lots of sanding, lots of paint stripping. But I think the next job will be dashboard, wiper, stubs. Don't actually have any wipers. I don't have a water bottle either, and then I need to start ripping out some wiring and some tubing. I'm going to do the welding with the body still on the chassis, and then I'll put some braces across to strengthen it when I lift the whole body up off the chassis, because everything needs cleaned underneath. But that's progress for end of week 1, start of week 2. Tracking well. Okay, so part 2 of the project. It's been a couple of weeks since the first video when the strip down began. So if we'll go from front to back. I've removed the grommets from the bumper. The front bumpers have come off, the chrome fenders. We've got both the external, they're sealed units, the bulbs, both are out with the flashers. Struggling to get the actual metal ring out just because the way everything's just sort of fairly rusted in and not been removed in 60 years, because I'm wanting to try and source from Moss Motors or Brown and Gammon some more rubber grommets just when I do the wiring harness at the very end of the project. I want to make sure everything's nice and tidy. Had a bit of an issue with the thermostat housing. It wouldn't come off because these studs are just so corroded because they've been exposed to gungy water now. I'm not sure, it looks pretty nasty down there. Some of that was from the gasket obviously. I'm hoping that means that there's not been a blown head gasket and that the head's all warped or anything, but we'll obviously have to see when we get to engine removal. This back stud has actually become a bit bent. I actually had to basically saw through the thermostat housing to try and free it off those bolts. And what I discovered when I got through there was there was actually no thermostat. And I've done a little bit of reading, and it seems that I think this car was raced, or was planned to be raced, just with the upgraded carburetors and the 1.8 litre engine, the MGB engine in it, and the windscreens that were sort of the two sort of semicircles, they're not the normal setup. I suspect the thermostat was left out because I do know that some race car drivers like to do that. A very helpful comment from someone, Pat Howley I think your name was, thank you again Pat, that gave me the link to the sort of repository for Australian cars just to track down the VIN number and the engine number. Obviously the engine's a different engine, but the The MG8 was produced in Australia in 1959, so not 1958 as it was sold to me as, but I'm not too upset about that. I've obviously been trying to do it as in an orderly fashion. The wiring I'm not doing in an orderly fashion because that's just all over the place, but we've bagged and tagged most of the components. That's the next lot of stuff to get bagged and tagged. We've got dashboard, some seat belts have come out. Now yes, the problem with this rusted thermostat housing was that the bulb for the sensor bulb for the temperature that goes to the back of the dashboard is one sealed unit with diethyl ether inside the capillary tube. It was just so rusted that it just wasn't possible to get out that brass nut. I even went and bought some flare nut spanners as per instructions from MGA Guru. It just wasn't happening, so in the end I had to actually drill it through and just destroy the sensor bulb. So I've been quoted price to get that fixed up. So that's the dial there. It's an original Smith's dial with oil and water coolant temperature. It's in Fahrenheit, but I'm not too concerned about that. We usually deal in Celsius here in Australia. So that's the tubing. They can apparently refurbish it. That's the bulb that I had to destroy and mangle. I've left it as is. Other than that, you can see at the end there is a little lumen, which where you have the diethyl ether, and now it's put in there under a vacuum so that you get the temperature. So it's not something really you can do it at home, but it's not something I'm going to tackle. I'm going to get everything calibrated anyway, so before I put it on the road I want to make sure oil and temperature particularly are calibrated. I'm not too worried about speedometer, but oil and temperature I want to know before my engine goes bang. Speedo cable I still need to feed out, a few little bits and bobs, taking out the housings for the heaters because I'm not planning to put a heater box in this. We're in Australia and it's pretty warm. It's going to be a fair weather car. It's not going to see any rain. The question is whether I get the bodywork guys, or myself even, to cover over these, or whether to just put some fake chrome, or not fake but real chrome inserts, but just not have any heater tubing below. Everything else come off. We've removed a door and we have exposed what is a larger problem than initially thought, but that was always going to be the case. I'm not too distressed. It's had some work, I've realised, because the sill was actually one continuous piece up to the B pillar. I've taken off the faceplate. It's all rusted to hell. Here it is here. A little bit mangled, used a bit of chemical stripper just to get to the screws, but really I had to drill a lot of them out because they were just so embedded and rusted in, same as the striker plate here. I've got to drill that last one out again. There's a little plate behind there. That looks gone. I mean, it's probably, if I get it blasted, it'd be alright, but down at the bottom it's just gone. So I suspect a new B-pillar post will have to get ordered from Kilmartins as well. This is all filler. Here we've got the rocker cover, or this outer sill, and it didn't have a join. It's either all been welded in beautifully and then bodyworked, or it's slightly different. I don't know how they've done it, but it's very different from the opposite side, so I've actually had to create a cut here. I've measured up from the other side and got roughly the same cut. So this whole outer sill, inner sill, I'm hoping the frame's alright. I'm hoping that's not frame, that's inner sill. In here, all of that's going to go. New B-pillar post, new B-pillar cover. This all looks pretty alright up here, where the baffle plate is, but down here it's gone, so I don't know, maybe the whole thing can get replaced. This is all depending on my welding skills. So I'm not going any further with removing any of this metalwork because I don't want the chassis to bend. I'm keeping it on the frame. I have just received, still in the box, shiny new welding machine. It's a MIG gas and gasless, but I'm not going to do too much of the gasless. I'm probably going to splurge and get myself a bottle of argon for the garage. I'm going to put just some box tubing across to span the gap from here to here. I would have gone from the A pillar to the B pillar, but as the B pillar looks like it's going to need replaced, so I don't think that's going to be sensible. But I'm just going to shore up the frame, the chassis on both sides. That side over across the way, the passenger side, doesn't need as much work. It'll still need some of the metalworks. I say it doesn't need much work, I haven't taken the paint off, so it might be a complete disaster zone. So I'm going to brace it before I try and remove the chassis off the frame. I've got this rear wing off. It was an absolute fight. Almost every single nut put up a fight. There was about 10 in total around the periphery. You had to remove the back sort of wheel cover or baffle plate. There's a couple of these bolts just for anyone that wants to do this. You get access to them internally from the boot. The rest of these you can get access to from the wheel well. These ones at the front, I had to remove that front baffle plate to get access to them. A couple were accessible from externally here, and then the one in here, which is where the seat belts were. You had to obviously take them in from inside the cockpit. So doors off, rear wing, bonnet, boot, radiator. Going around the back now. I did have the wheel off, just to see what the sort of damage was. Everything's just so full of crud. It's not actually that bad rust-wise, but the next project is to get the other wings off. This one fought me so much I'm a little bit scared. Just in the process of taking off these straps for the fuel tank. The diff is just manky, but actually it looks like the mud is almost protected for the rust, so hopefully it hasn't trapped in the moisture. When I started scraping small regions off, it looks pretty good. Handbrake cable, I'll need to take the handbrake off before the transmission tunnel comes off. And up the side, I think I showed this in the first video, but this side looks a little bit nicer. This all looks pretty new actually. I've come to the conclusion that it's maybe had some work that just looks far too shiny and new. And there's the join here, just in line with that B post cover plate, which didn't exist on the other side, or had been blended in so nicely it wasn't apparent to me. Job of the day. Hopefully it's not going to blow the highlights of the video. Fuel tank is in the process of being sanded down. It doesn't look quite as nice there. Some nice shiny metal. So I'm bringing that back to almost bare metal. So the last thing, the most recent thing I've done is taking out the fuel sender unit, which I was told were brass, but that's certainly not brass. But anyway, I'll put that in some fuel, just make sure it doesn't have any leaks. And then while it's in there's the top there. While it's in the fuel, I'll just hook up an ohm meter to the electrode, and apparently between empty and full you'll get a different reading in resistance. So I'll do a bit more research on that and try and show you that in a video as well. Okay, so that's it for this start of week 3. Things are starting to come off. It's not moved too far, just because that rear wing fought me so much, and I'm trying to preserve as much of the bodywork as possible, so I don't have too much extra welding to do over and above the sills. But obviously once it gets blasted, it'll really reveal what there is to deal with. But that's the project as we're up to just now.